Hi, I'm Apurva and welcome to my series 100 Days, 100 Problems, where I solve your Power Apps challenges and turn them into working solutions. Let's read our today's problem. I wanted to know if there is a way for users to create or make changes to columns through Power Apps. I know they can't make changes to the SharePoint data source columns through Power Apps, but is there a way to create an app that users can create additional questions in a form or make changes to the questions rather than me having to go into SharePoint to make changes? For this, first we'll go to SharePoint and create a list for questions. Then we'll start creating columns like question, which will hold all the questions. Then question type, whether the question type is a text, a number, a date, a choice, or it is a yes no question. Then we'll also create a display order column which will help us define the sequence of all the questions. And then finally we will have is active column, so we can decide whether we want to keep a question enabled or disabled. I'm going to add few questions here just for reference when we connect our SharePoint list to the Power Apps. Now, if our question type is a choice, we also need a column to record all the choice options. For that, I have created a text column and we are going to separate each choice by a comma. Then we'll create another list to record responses. First, we'll have to create a lookup column so that we can see for which particular question the response was recorded. And then lastly, we have response column, which will hold the responses we receive from the users. Now that we have created our list, let's connect our SharePoint list to our Power Apps. First, we'll add a gallery so we can see all the existing questions. For that, I'm creating collections so we can load our list into the collection. Now that the collection is configured, I'm going to add the data source to the gallery so we can see all the existing questions in the SharePoint list. Now I'm going to add a form so we can edit the existing questions or we can add new questions to our SharePoint list. For editing existing question, we need to know which question we are editing. So for that, I'm going to set a variable. So every time I select a question, the record will be captured in this variable. Now once I have the variable set, I'm going to filter this form. So whenever I'm selecting a existing question, it will filter the form to the selected record. Now this was for existing questions. Now let's add a button so we can add new questions. So I'm going to use the same form for existing questions as well as for new questions. So I'm setting up a new variable, new question. So whenever I click the new question button, it updates that variable. Now I need to set the mode for the form. So whenever I am creating a new question, the form will be in the new mode, and whenever I'm editing the existing record, it will be in the edit mode. So whenever I'm clicking on the new question, the form resets and everything is blank. And whenever I'm editing an existing question, it will show me that record. Now let's add a button. So whenever we are adding new questions to the SharePoint list, this button will help us to submit that record. For that, I'm using submit form. Now let's test it out. I'm creating a new question and it should update my SharePoint list once I hit submit. Now we have created two screens. One is admin screen for the users who will have access to modify questions or add questions. We'll create a separate screen for users to share their responses. Here we'll only show those questions whose is active is equal to true. So only questions which are enabled, which are set to true, only those questions will be shown here, and then the users can share their responses for those particular questions. Now I'm going to add a gallery so I can see all the questions that are in the SharePoint list. Now we need to add different components because we have a text input, we also have date, we have a choice. So we need to make sure all our components are configured accordingly. So I'm adding a text input, and now we'll set its visibility to only when the question type is equals to text or even a number. Similarly, now let's add drop down and set its visibility only when the question type is equal to choice. That way we can see all the choice options that are available for that particular record. Now keep in mind, we are storing choice options in a text, and whatever options we have are separated by a comma. So we are using split function. Similarly, I'm going to add date toggle and make sure that visibility is set to the respective condition. And finally, we need a submit button so we can patch all these records in our SharePoint list and record their respective responses. Now we'll create a collection to capture all the responses in the gallery and then finally patch it to the SharePoint list. Here is the final code for the submit button. Now let's test the submit button to see if the responses have been added. I'm going to clean the app a bit and let's see its final look. So here is the final look. On the left side we have all the questions. On the right side we have the form to either edit or to add new question. On the top we have the button, and I've also added a response page button, which is basically just to navigate to the response page. Here is the final look for the response page. You don't need to share your admin screen with all users. Only the authenticated users can access it. And that's it. If you like this video, please share, comment and subscribe.